is Travis Peardon. Travis is the livestock and feed extension specialist with the Ministry of Agriculture in Outlook here, and he's going to talk about one of the projects he was working on over the 2020 field season. So take it away, Travis. Your presentation is up and ready to go, it looks like.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. So like Kelly mentioned, I'm going to talk about a project that I had underway here this last summer with a cooperator, Dennis Fugarud, about 12 miles north of Broderick. And the project we did was corn silage yields under high fertility conditions. So I guess first off, I just want to touch on why you should consider irrigated corn silage as a forage source on your farm. Probably the biggest reason is just the yield potential of corn. It'll out yield any other forage crop that we can grow in Saskatchewan. So if you have limited irrigated acres, it will guarantee a feed supply. Otherwise, it also makes acres available for other uses. Corn is also an excellent energy source. Corn also has excellent palatability. It's very easy to get calves started on it in the fall, easier than barley silage. Then the other advantage that we see with that long harvest window. So corn, we probably have a 3 or almost a 4-week window in the fall to harvest that. So if you're relying on a custom silager to come in and take your crop off, that's very important. We know with barley silage, if it gets really hot at the end of July, early August, we're looking at a matter of a few days before that crop is past its prime window for harvest. Why would you not want to grow corn silage? I guess number one is just the large investment per acre. As I'll show you later, corn can be $700 to $800 an acre to grow, so it does mean you're going to have more risk. You need to pay attention to detail. Agronomically, corn is a very tricky crop to grow. You need to know what you're doing, especially when it comes to weed control. You can ruin a corn crop very quickly if you're not spraying it at the right time to control the weeds. You need specialized equipment for seeding. It's recommended to use a corn planter. Air drills and air seeders do work, but you will sacrifice your yield. When it comes to spraying, I've seen producers use ground rigs for the first application when the corn plants are very small, but you will need a high clearance sprayer for the second application. One issue that we do see with corn silage is moderate to low protein levels. With corn having such a high energy level, it's common for producers to want to cut that corn with something like barley straw or wheat straw. But of course, when you dilute that corn silage with a product like straw that has low protein, it can make having enough protein in the diet a challenge. And another thing I just wanted to mention too was, are your pivot drops spaced properly? It's quite common around Outlook here anyways. When you look at pivots, to see the first 3 or 4 towers that we don't have a drop on every outlet. So this is fine if you're growing canola or cereal crops, but it can be an issue when you grow corn and those drops are down in the crop canopy. They simply can't shoot water far enough to penetrate that canopy. And this can be a real issue too if you're planning on putting on some nitrogen through fertigation. So the objective of our project was to demonstrate the yield potential of corn for silage when fertility levels are not limiting. We know that corn has high yield potential, but also needs high nutrient inputs. And we've seen around the Lake Diefenbaker area that corn yields seem to have topped at just over 20 tons per acre. So we wanted to see if we could go higher with this yield by increasing our fertility. So what did we do? So we had 3 treatments, 8 acres each, and what we did was we had a yield target of 20, 24, and 28 tons per acre in our trial. Just want to mention, or show you what the fertility removal of corn silage is. So this is information I got from the Ag PhD app. This is a free app that you can download. You can put in any crop you like, and it'll show you what your fertility removal will be. So based on this, if we look at on the left-hand side, our yield in tons per acre from 20 up to 28, we can see we're going to use anywhere from 194 up to 271 pounds of nitrogen. Phosphorus anywhere from 62 up to about 87. Potassium, corn really likes potassium, so you can see we're at 146 all the way up to 204. And then sulfur from about 22 up to 30 for the different yield targets. So this is a soil test that our producer had done before we started the project. So he had about 12 pounds per acre of nitrogen, 22 pounds per acre of phosphorus, 374 of potassium, and 20 pounds per acre of sulfur. So this field was corn in 2019, and he had a really good crop, a really good yield. So it's not surprising to see his nitrogen and phosphorus levels a little lower than where we would like to see them. So on May 14th, we had a floater out and we applied our fertilizer in our different plots, and you can see the picture of the ground with the high fertility treatment. It was just amazing to see how much fertilizer was on the ground. I think this was the most fertilizer per acre that they had put through this floater for this trial. So what did we add for fertility? So we did a blend of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur that was broadcast and worked into the soil pre-plant. And then our producer put on about 105 pounds of nitrogen by fertigation through his pivot. So we look at the normal fertility. In our blend, we put on about almost 78 pounds of nitrogen that was broadcast, and with his fertigation, we were up to 182. The mid fertility, we put on 130 pounds upfront broadcast, and then with fertigation, we're up to 235. High fertility, we put on 170 pounds upfront, and with fertigation, we got to 275 pounds. Our phosphorus, we put on 50, 80, and 104 pounds. Potassium, 50, 120, and 175 pounds. Sulfur, about 10, 16, and almost 21 pounds an acre of sulfur. But you can really see we had huge difference in our cost per acre of fertilizer. It ranged from $144 up to $210 for the mid fertility, and then we were as high as $258 for the high fertility treatment. So the field was seeded on May 18th, and the variety that our producer was using was Pioneer P7527 AM. It's a 2150 heat unit variety. It seems to be a popular variety in the Outlook area, has worked well for a lot of producers, and it does have the Roundup Ready and also the Liberty Link traits, which is important. Just wanted to show you this picture. On the left is before the producer sprayed his first application of Roundup. So you can see the weeds are just poking through the ground. And this is a good time to go out and get control of those weeds. You can see on the left, this was about a week or 10 days later that there's the corn is weed free, and all you can see in the field is corn. And this is what you want to see. You never want to see weeds overtaking the corn, because this will have an effect on your yield. Mid-August timeframe, our crop was looking quite healthy. One thing our producer noted was that he only had one cob per plant, and the previous year with the same variety he had 2 cobs per plant, and I think the cobs were almost a little bigger. So I think it was just a function of the strange weather year that we had here this past year.
So please be
We then had a frost on September 7th, which brought our trial to a halt. At this time, we'd accumulated 2,167 crop heat units from the date of planting. The corn was not dented, there was no milk line, so we were a long ways away from this crop being mature enough to silage. And I would guess we probably gave up 20 to 25% of our potential yield just because that the corn kernels hadn't filled like they should have. So it was a few weeks later, October 1st, that harvest took place. The corn had dried down to about 60%, so not too bad. So that's where we can see that long window that is available for harvesting corn silage. So now if we look at our yield and quality, so we did not hit our yield targets like we had hoped. So our normal fertility, and I adjusted the yields to 65% moisture. So normal fertility, we did 18.5. Mid fertility, we hit about 19.4, and high fertility was just over 20 tons per acre. Our TDN, or energy levels, we were at 65.26 on the normal, a little lower on the mid fertility, 64.42, but then again higher on the high fertility treatment at 67.68. Protein is one that is very interesting. So we range from about 7% on the normal fertility, almost 8 on mid fertility, and over 9 on the high fertility. So it looks like that extra nitrogen did contribute to our protein levels. Our fiber levels around 50%. Our high fertility had the lowest amount of fiber, which tells me that it probably had the most to gain if we would have had a couple weeks of frost-free weather before we got that frost. So I just want to put the economics to this project. So this is a spreadsheet that we have available if anyone is interested in looking at the costs of growing corn silage. So just across the top, we've got our expected yield. I put in the 18.52, 19.4, and 20.08. The moisture at 65%. And if you just go down a bit to the expenses, and these are obviously the same except for their fertilizer costs. Our field preparation at $10 an acre. Seed is going to be about $100 an acre for corn. Seeding at $21. Then fertilizer, I have our different amounts in there. So the $144.10, $210, and the $258. Chemical and application about $30 per acre. Harvest cost, it usually runs about $11 per ton. And of course, the more corn we harvest, the more our harvest cost goes up. So for this trial, our harvest costs range from $203.72 up to about $220.88. Then if you keep going down to other expenses, so we have property taxes, land cost I put in at $100, water and power at $100 an acre. So you can see our total expenses to grow corn quite high, $714, $791, and $846. So we work that back to our total cost per wet ton. We're looking at $38.60 up to about $42.15 for the high cost. So not a huge difference there. But definitely was more expensive with that extra fertility. So just to end, I just wanted to thank our cooperators, so Dennis and Clint Fuguru to Broderick, the RAC, who did custom application and gave us some agronomy advice through the project, KSW Custom Ag, our custom silagers that took the time to do our yield data on their forage harvester, and then of course Saskatchewan Agriculture Adopt program, which funded the project. So with that, Kelly, I think we can take some questions.
Thanks, Travis. Any questions for Travis? Just again, use your raise hand option or in the chat function. Currently no questions in the chat function. I guess one for me, Travis, any plans for projects around corn going forward?
Yeah, I talked to quite a few producers around the Lake Diefenbaker area, and one of the questions that they have is just the different, what heat unit varieties they should be using. So we're looking at doing a project with that next year with probably 3 different heat units per trial. But I think the corn fertility thing is something we're going to keep looking at. It's important, to maximize the yield from the corn silage crops.
Okay, thanks. And there's one, I guess, comment here. Economics don't consider the extra quality and reduced intake per day as a result. For $10 a ton, isn't the higher TDN and protein worth it? Can you comment on that?
I guess that would be somewhat producer specific. It just depends on what else you have on your ranch, that's available to feed. And it depends what class of cow you're feeding too, if they need that extra protein. But quite often, if producers have alfalfa, it's pretty cheap to add that to bring up the protein. But yeah, definitely we did see better feed quality, so likely is a benefit for sure.
One more question here, or comment. The variety was 2150 corn heat unit, and you stated it reached 2167. Can you comment on why it never reached maturity despite reaching the corn heat unit?
Yeah, I think that's just a factor of the strange year we had. We were so cool in May and June, and then we had good heat in July. But I mean, corn can only take so much heat. So once you get over 30 degrees Celsius, it's not a benefit and can actually hurt corn. So I think that's why we didn't see that corn mature like it should have based on those heat units that we received.